First time you've appeared before this committee in over a year on the job. And your predecessor, General Kelly, never appeared at all during his tenure as Homeland Security Secretary before becoming White House Chief of Staff. Much of the Department of Homeland Security's operations fall squarely within this committee's jurisdiction, and this administration has engaged in a wide range of dramatic policy changes, yet the committee has failed to conduct any meaningful oversight until now. Moreover, members of the committee have written dozens of letters to you, many of which have received little or no substantive response. As we move into the next Congress, I want to put you and the department on notice. The time for accountability has arrived. The members of this committee have a responsibility to ask hard questions of any administration and to ensure that federal agencies are acting in accordance with the law and in the best interest of the American people. That job begins today. Foremost on our minds is the tragic death of 7-year-old Jacqueline Kalmakin while in DHS custody. It is important that we understand exactly what led to her death and what steps DHS is taking to prevent a similar tragedy from occurring. The fact that CBP does not conduct a full medical examination of people it holds in its custody when they come into its custody is outrageous, and it is a policy that should be changed today. But more broadly, this heartbreaking case also highlights the failure of the Trump administration's haphazard and chaotic immigration policies. For example, although the law expressly allows individuals to request asylum regardless of the manner of entry, this administration has repeatedly implored asylum seekers to come to ports of entry. At the same time, DHS turns away those who do come to those ports, forcing them to wait weeks or months before actually being able to file an asylum application. These conflicting messages create mass confusion and actually drive migrants to use dangerous routes, which some people suspect is the purpose of this policy. In September, the department's own Inspector General issued a report describing the impact of DHS's policies. The IG found evidence that the practice of turning away asylum seekers and, quote, limiting the volume of asylum seekers entering at ports of entry, close quote, may have increased illegal crossing attempts. One asylum seeker, quote, had been turned away 3 times by an officer on the bridge before deciding to take her chances on illegal entry. In other words, the administration's dangerous and chaotic policies have caused desperate people to use desperate means to find protection for themselves and their children. This has likely cost at least 1 life already, and it will likely cost many more unless we return to a more rational and humane policy. We must also conduct much needed and long overdue oversight over the department's disastrous family separation policy. At its most basic level, we have 3 simple questions. What made the administration think that seizing children from the arms of their parents was acceptable at any level? Under what authority and under whose direction was this done? And now, what are you doing to repair the untold damage the department has inflicted on these children and their families? Not only was this policy abhorrent and morally repugnant, it is clear that the department was either incompetent or grossly negligent in its implementation, which only compounded the trauma inflicted on innocent children and their parents. For example, DHS failed to keep sufficient records that would enable the eventual reunification of separated children with their parents. Again, this is the conclusion of the department's own Inspector General. Among other things, the IG found that DHS, quote, struggled to identify, track, and reunite families, unquote, that your agency caused confusion by providing inconsistent information to separated families, and that the department, quote, was not fully prepared to implement the administration's zero-tolerance policy or to deal with some of its after-effects, close quote. I would also ask, on what planet can a humane democratic country deport parents without giving them the opportunity to have their children with them, and without maintaining records so you could identify them afterwards? The fact that this was handled so poorly, and that some separated children have yet to be reunited with their parents, is unacceptable. Mass kidnapping by the federal government is criminal. We recently learned that DHS piloted a family separation policy in El Paso months earlier. The fact that these issues were not identified at the time, or that they were willfully ignored, demonstrates a callousness and an indifference to human suffering that is simply appalling, unless it is deliberate to deter people from exercising their right to request political asylum. It is past time for a full accounting of this shameful policy. We must also look at the administration's enforcement priorities or lack thereof. Rather than prioritize for removal those who threaten public safety, as was done by past administrations, this administration has effectively chosen to prioritize everyone, and thus no one. Particularly egregious are the policy changes targeting women, children, and families. DHS, for example, ended the presumption to release pregnant women from detention, and it seeks to indefinitely detain families by overturning the Flores Settlement Agreement through rulemaking. All of this is being done despite the fact that the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and the American Academy of Family Physicians have concluded that, quote, the conditions in DHS facilities are not appropriate for pregnant women or children. Not content, close quote, not content to attack and dehumanize those who seek asylum in our country, a right guaranteed by our laws, the administration is also attacking legal immigration. It is hell-bent on stripping DACA recipients of their work permits, ending TPS protections for thousands of immigrants who have been here legally for decades, and even rescinding work authorization for the spouses of H-1B workers who have been approved for immigrant visas. DHS also has proposed to dramatically reinterpret the public charge ground for inadmissibility, which would effectively penalize individuals for receiving supplemental public benefits to which they are legally entitled. As DHS's own analysis found, it may make America sicker and poorer, and it will have a profound negative effect on the health, safety, and economic well-being of communities across America. As I stated in a comment submitted on this rule with 110 of my colleagues, the rule is an unlawful and dangerous attempt by the administration to circumvent Congress and to reduce legal immigration. The administration has been clear in its desire to cut legal immigration, especially for the family members of U.S. citizens. The President, for example, has repeatedly pushed the RAISE Act, which would cut legal immigration in half. After failing to get that bill through Congress, the administration is now seeking to accomplish its goals by creating obstacles for individuals legally seeking to come to this country. The Trump administration, including DHS under your watch, has launched a relentless attack against immigrants of all stripes. Although your department has evaded meaningful oversight until now, you can be sure that beginning in January, this committee intends to do its job in a fair but firm manner. The time for zero accountability is over, and we are determined to ensure that the department's policies and practices are aligned with the laws and with